Has there been anything that surprised you along the way?
How easy people think it is to be in business.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, Jorge Valenzuela.
This is education coach Jorge Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pumped to have Jorge Valenzuela with me today to talk about all the amazing things that he does. Our Side Hustle series is highlighting awesome people who do work in education, many of them in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And Jorge started there, and now he's built this massive thing where he's impacting people all over the country. Jorge, thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate that, Kyle. I do want to congratulate you as well. Your TikTok content is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You have a lot of reach. You kept on showing up on my algorithm over and over again. And finally I said, okay, let me see this guy. And I just love it. I love everything you do. I try to hit like, repost. I appreciate you as well.
I appreciate that. It's funny. I'm part of a Teach Better podcast network, and we have Teach Better team in general. And we had somebody on who is blown up in the TikTok space, and she threw out a challenge, and some of us have been doing it. So I'm like 90 days in, post something every single day. So it's nice to know that I keep popping up. I do see that you like the stuff I put out, and I just hope that my bald chrome dome doesn't scare too many people away. It has grown a little bit. It's not massive, but I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. Jorge, whenever I bring somebody on, I give them just a little bit to do some backfill and talk about where you were at all the way to what you're doing now in their ed journey. You want to catch everybody up to what you're doing now, but go back as far as you want.
Sure. I never meant to be an educator. That was never my intention. In college, I was in computer science. I was in business, not realizing that all the business courses, particularly in marketing and accounting, what helped me today. I wanted to be a computer scientist. I got into coding, I got into IT, and I got a contract for about $37,000 to work in New York City back in 2001. And I thought I was going to be rich, man. I ran through the computer science department at my school, SUNY Old Westbury in New York. I bragged to all my friends how rich I was going to be. I made it, $37,000. And then I went home and did the same thing. My dearest aunt, Mrs. Best, who passed away about 7 years ago, she was a teacher, and she heard me talking this way. And she said, young man, you should be a teacher. You have a very unique way of explaining things, and we need that in the classroom. I'll be honest, Kyle, I didn't have the confidence I have now, and I didn't see that for myself. But I've learned this about life. The most important thing in life are relationships. And when people see potential in you that you don't see in yourself and they like you, they will help you. Sometimes they also create opportunities for you. Her and the principal at her school made a summer school class for me to teach technology for 5 weeks. And I thought that I would do that 5 weeks and that'd be it. I met 25 kids that completely changed my outlook on life, on my career, which is why I'm here now. I got into the classroom. I started out as a computer science and as a STEM teacher. I did that for about 7 years. I got my administrative license, and I realized in the internship, I don't want to be a principal anytime soon. I don't want to be an AP. I don't want to do cafeteria, bus duty, or referrals. I just did my work. I got a part-time job after school, which was a side hustle. I just did that. And someone saw me teaching one day, and she worked at central office, and she encouraged me to apply for the leadership position for my content area. I'll be honest, again, I didn't have the confidence, but when people like you, they come back and they approach you. And
Sure.
She approached me for 6 months.
Wow.
And finally, I interviewed, and what I didn't know was I was green in all of the leadership skills, but I understood the content. And that's what they wanted. Someone that knew the content, knew the teaching part of it, and then they can help with all the other pieces. And I did that for about 9 years. I remember one of my mentors said to me, it's going to take you 9 years to learn this job. And I remember listening to that and thinking to myself, oh, he's crazy. I'm doing this 3 years, and then I'm going to be doing the next thing. And he was right. He was right. It's not just learning about curriculum and instruction. It's also learning how budgets work and how school systems are run. It's a system, and a system has a lot of moving parts. And it takes a long time. We had 50 schools, so there was a lot to learn. I had a director. Her name was Mrs. Victoria Oakley, and she just passed away a couple of months ago. She made sure that every 9 weeks, every quarter, every instructional specialist, every instructional leader in the school system visited all of the 50 schools. We did something called instructional rounds, which were visiting classrooms, seeing instruction in real time, learning about our kids, learning about the teachers, having a data debrief, and then designing interventions, PD interventions based on what we saw. I took that into my own business. I became a master teacher with an organization called the Buck Institute for Education. I got into the PhD program. I learned the science behind a lot of the practices I was using, and then I created my own systems, and I'm here today.
Wow. Man, that's an amazing story. That's interesting. It's been a journey. It literally has been quite a journey up to where you're at now. And we're going to dive into more about what that looks like and what you do specifically, which is super impactful as you're traveling all over the place and getting to know so many people.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning.
Previously, you've done a ton of work with PBL. And so you want to share anything as far as like PBL and the importance of that out in our school systems?
Think of PBL as a playbook. Imagine being a basketball player and you have a lot of talent, a lot of charisma. You can run, you can throw, you can shoot, but you don't have a playbook. You might do well with other novices, but if you get on a team where other players have a playbook and the opposing team has a playbook, now you're not going to be very effective. Project-based learning is an instructional approach, is a teaching methodology, but most importantly, is a research-based way to teach. It uses an amalgam of strategies from the behavioral and the cognitive learning theories. It's constructivist teaching, where teaching happens along a continuum, not in one day, not in 2 days. It's a process. Projects are typically held, or should be, 2 to 3 weeks, especially for educators that have a lot of content that they have to teach. My job is to go to schools and help them plan the project and model how to facilitate the project. I have several articles out there. I have a couple of books that have a framework for what students should be experiencing in a project and how teachers can plan the project using a system. Systems have lots of moving parts. Then also how to facilitate it using a system and using a framework and steps.
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said. And it's super important. It's super important providing opportunities for young people to learn in a variety of ways. I'll be honest with you, it is engaging work. From an instructional standpoint, is super engaging. We're trying to find creative ways to impact kids in the classroom, and PBL is definitely one of the ways that you can raise your interest level, drive your motivation up, and then get more bang for your buck. I know now when you're out traveling around, you share a wide variety of messages. What are one or two of the main things you're hitting on now when you're presenting?
My services are really broken up into 4 sections. One are my speaking services, which I do a lot of keynoting now. Another one is educational services. And under educational services, I have several strands. One is my leadership strand. One is my curriculum and instruction strand. One is my PBL strand. One is computer science and tech and AI. And then another one is just wellness and life skills. It really depends on what the school wants and where they're focused. Because I'm in classrooms, one of the things I've seen is that a lot of young people don't want to be at school right now. They don't really see learning relevant to not just their lives, but their future aspirations. And they don't feel that they have a lot of choice in what and how they learn. One of the things that I've been helping educators do, whether they're teaching a project or not, make their teaching and learning a mix of aligning the academic content, but with helping young people in cultivating their interests and passions.
Interesting.
That's an important thing. If you look at people who aren't happy, who don't want to be somewhere, it's because they're not doing something that they're interested in. And then a lot of young people are on a phone all day, and so they don't even know how to cultivate their interests. They don't even know what they like. My message is help young people explore their passions, explore their interests. But before we can do that, we have to build a relationship. We have to build rapport. I'm seeing that the pandemic has brought in educators, and a lot of them are coming from non-traditional pathways. They're career switchers, or they came to us during the pandemic and they came online. So building relationships and rapport is not always easy. I always point them to research that explains that expectations, what we expect from people, has a significant impact on our interactions, on how we treat them, which in turn has an impact on the learning outcomes. John Hattie once said, see learning through the eyes of students, which I take it to mean to know them as people and also as learners. One of the things that I do in my workshops, whether it's PBL or just instructional alignment, is taking some time to identify students that need us the most, not annoy us the most, because that's the deficit mindset, but that need us the most, and then just jotting down things that we know about them, their interests, their goals, their assets, and then their academic needs, and then making instructional decisions in our lessons based on those things we know about them. That's important. When teachers see it that way, they start to realize, oh, here's a system, here's a framework. He's modeling for us. I can adapt this, tweak it, make it my own, and then see how it goes. I think a lot of them haven't gotten that. And that's what makes my work very successful. I'm able to model things that I'm talking about. It goes beyond theory and then into practice. And now for a word from one of our sponsors. Are technology issues slowing you down at your school? If that's the case, look no further than 5-Star Technology's Virtual Help Desk. Their team of experts are available to support you remotely, resolving up to 40% of common issues like password resets, device connectivity, and lots more. With just a few clicks, you'll have access to their live chat from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Just enter your email to get started. Then you'll live chat with one of 5-Star's EdTech experts to diagnose your problem. And if their virtual help desk agent can't solve the issue completely, they will dispatch the ticket to your school's on-site tech team. Let 5-Star Technology Solutions be your support partner. Experience their virtual help desk, which is affordable, efficient, and always there for you. Please contact them at 5startech.com/contact us. Once again, 5startech.com/contact us. And for your convenience, you'll find this link in the episode show notes.
It's interesting. A lot of great gems right there. Going back to what you were originally saying about motivating young people, connecting with young people. A lot of what we do in education, that's phase one, right? If we're going to impact them, it all, like you said, starts with the relationships. What are we doing to build relationships with kids? From my end, a lot of the work that I do, kids with academic and behavioral needs, I always say, listen, if we're going to make an impact, it has to start at phase one. Like it has to, if we're going to get kids moving towards whatever goals and whatever potential that we want them to hit, it's got to start with phase one. So I love everything you were just sharing right there. It's spot on.
Yeah. I do want to add to that. I wish that more school leaders, when they're implementing a new initiative, especially around teaching and learning, that they do a book study and they look at what the research is looking to impact. Think of what you just said. When it pertains to instructional strategies, we're looking at academic achievement, engagement, motivation, and attendance. This is what we're trying to improve. If teachers have that at the forefront of their planning, and then they're able to identify different needs and different things about particular students, especially the ones that need them the most, then they can make better instructional decisions by keeping achievement, engagement, motivation, and attendance at the forefront.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we lost that. I don't know.
Yeah.
These are the important things.
It absolutely is important. You aren't kidding. So much of what's happened in the last few years, in a positive way, has caused us to look a little bit deeper, I think, as far as how we're approaching things. But it has caused a reset. And sometimes because of that, we lost maybe some things that we felt were valuable before, and we need to re-up that and make sure that we're on point again.
And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the Smart Lab environment and the way the project process is set up.
Smart Lab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to like communicate better and even like deal with social emotional stuff. Like they're having a bad day, a Smart Lab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with Smart Lab.
I want to dive into the business side of things with you as you have
Sure.
a dynamic business going where you're doing all kinds of great work. Can you just take a second and share some of the things you've learned from the business side as you've been working on this for a few years now?
If you don't make time to understand business, you won't be in business for long. I didn't understand business in the beginning as much as I do now, but I was very well organized. I understood how to market myself, and I think that's evident online. Although I don't have a large following, I have a strong online presence. One day, probably through paying for ads, it will happen where I'll be able to have my content reach who it's supposed to reach,
Right.
who it's supposed to impact. But in the meantime, I've learned how to market, how to promote myself, how to keep my accounting in order. I have a great accountant. I have a great bookkeeper. I make sure that all these things are all happening. I'm in the know, but I'm focusing on the main thing, which is my content, which are my articles, are my books, are my workshops, and are my video. That's where I'm at now, and that's where I'm focused. I think if people don't learn that aspect of business or these different aspects, then they don't have a system. I don't think they'll be in business for long. It'll be just that, a side hustle and not a
Right.
business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So true too. Obviously, you've been doing this for a while. What do you like about running your own business?
Making my own schedule and doing work, I think, is meaningful. When I was at the district level, I was always being told what to do. In the later years, I didn't have a lot of input into the work I was doing, but I found a way after hours to focus on the things I thought were important, on project-based learning, on STEM and computer science, writing lessons and those things. But now I get to do that all full time. Now I get to work on the things that I really like to do. I think that's making an impact on education, especially in my spaces. You can Google my name and education, and you can find a variety of articles, a variety of podcasts on various topics that align to teaching and learning, and now also business. So that makes me very happy to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Has there been anything that surprised you along the way?
How easy people think it is to be in business. A lot of people that I've seen don't take the time to look at what the consumer needs or what's important to stakeholders and to consumers and what the pain points are. Instead, they focus on what they like to do and what they think is great, and also on how great they think they are. And they put that out into the world, then it doesn't go very far.
Yeah.
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 Unless it's controversial. If it's controversial, then yeah, it's going to reach people. But that fizzles out eventually.
Yeah.
I love that I didn't experience success in the beginning. It's taken me 15 years to get up to this point where Kyle Hill is going to call me and say, I want to interview you. It took that long. It took 5 years of learning how to work with adults at the district level. It took 6 years on the road, not realizing I was an apprentice, but just looking to advance the work of PBL or the organization I was with, and just being a good backup and a really good facilitator. And some people will be a backup forever, and that's okay for them. But sometimes there's some people like ourselves that have something more that they want to say, and the audience accepts that. And when the audience accepts that, it's a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a right. It's a privilege. In that privilege, we have to figure out, okay, just like my teaching and learning is not about me. It's about the students. But it begins with me. It begins with us in becoming who the students need us to be so we can help them. The same thing goes in business. Who's my audience? What is it that they want? What are their objectives? And now how am I going to show up and tailor this presentation in a way that makes the information accessible to them. I just recently got a very nice compliment from someone that I respect, Mike Maddows over at Solution Tree. He's one of the leaders of the PLC movement. And Mike said to me, "You're easy to learn from." And that's what we have to be, easy to learn from, and put information out there that is reputable, is research informed, but there's gotta be some personal story about how we did that thing. If we don't do that, then people think we have an agenda. And once they think we have an agenda, it's over.
Right.
Grand opening, grand closing. Right? What really surprises me is how people think it's easy, and it's not. It takes years. There's a guy named Coach Corey Wayne, and he said once, it takes 10 years to develop a business model and to be able to take your gifts and your attributes and package them in a way that the audience can receive it to their benefit.
It's a learning process, right? And so as you were saying earlier, like the idea as you were talking, even before you said it, I was thinking, wow, it's a lot like working with kids. Like you got to know your audience, just like you got to know the students you're working with. And so I imagine that if you're going to have longevity, you got to be adaptable, you got to be able to evolve, and you got to be able to understand the people you're working with, which all makes logical sense.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning.
You hit on this already, but do you have any like just general advice for anybody who might be interested into diving into the business side of things, whatever avenue they might have as a side hustle?
Set yourself up to win and create a system. If you don't have a system, it's going to be very difficult to grow and maintain your business. My system has several moving pieces, but for the audience, I focus on 4 things. On branding, which is marketplace branding, which is what you want the field to think about and to know about you, brand recognition, but also it's personal branding. Your reputation is what people think about when they see you and when they hear your name. That's an important thing. If we don't get in front of that, then other people get in front of it for you. With social media today and with websites, it's easier to do now more than ever. One thing I do want to tell people is this: you have a personal brand, whether you know it or not. People do think things about us. It's important that we get in front of the narrative. Number 2 in my system is content. When I first started, it was articles, books, and workshops. But times have changed. Now it's podcasts, videos, and reels. All we need is passion to start, but we have to look at what the field is demanding as far as content goes and then deliver. And then there's marketing. I own 2 pieces of real estate, which is my website and my newsletter. Then I rent real estate, and those are my social media channels. You have to go where the clients are. The clients for edupreneurs are on LinkedIn and on Instagram, mainly. There are some on Twitter, but they're mainly going to look at your Instagram or your LinkedIn when they're considering hiring you. There's also your collaborations, like we're doing right now. Me and you, Kyle, are collaborating. We're working on a project together.
Right.
This is an important thing to do. And then if you have a podcast or you have a show or you go to conferences, sponsors. I have a couple of sponsors now, and I'm also growing that. The 4th part of my system, the audience sees, are my tech tools. If you look at my social media, it looks beautiful. It's because I'm using 4 or 5 different AI tools that are improving picture quality, video quality, and the captions so that I can say things in a brief, succinct, and impactful way. And that's just part of my system. People should realize that in the beginning, all you need is passion. All you need is passion to start. But as you start to set a goal, in that goal setting, you won't know how to get there. But through goal attainment and from learning from people that are already doing what you want to do and that are already successful, then you start to realize, oh, there's a system. And each system has moving parts. And an effective entrepreneur is going to be able to execute in each of those parts. And that's where I'm focused.
That's a great piece of information to end on. That is so many gems right there. Thank you, George. It is a learning experience diving into this rabbit hole of anything, whether it be side hustle or even if you're on your own, running your own business. And being willing to be patient with the process is important, and learning and adapting, like you said, is important. And then putting the work in to make things look great like your content does. There is no doubt when you look at something you put out into the world or you listen to the podcast, it is well thought out. It is clean. It is organized. It's professional. And that comes through. It really comes through. Go ahead, George.
The algorithm doesn't even support what I do. I'm relying on people like you, on my contemporaries, on my friends and family to help boost the algorithm for me. If you're not controversial, if you're not doing silly dances, if you don't take your clothes off, the algorithm is not going to support you. You have to pay to be seen. You have to pay for ads, or you have to take advantage of a new platform like TikTok in order to be part of that algorithm.
Yeah.
I'm just saving up my money so that I can pay for the ads that will make my content go to the people that truly need it and that would benefit from it, and they'll make it viral for me. Another way that I did not mention is to be featured by someone like Forbes that has a big platform. I'm not there yet, but I'm enjoying the process. You don't need a large following as an entrepreneur, but you need a strong online presence. And I believe I have achieved that.
It is not just the numbers, right? Like it's the passion of the people who are supporting you. So, and you obviously have been building that for a long time, and it takes a while to get to the point where you're feeling comfortable with the support that you get from the communities or the just your followers in general. George, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. So much amazing stuff. If anybody wants to connect with you, where do you want to send them?
On all my social media platforms at George Does PBL, that is JORGE Does PBL, and on my website, lifelonglearningdefined.com.
Awesome. And we'll put that down in the show notes. George, thank you so much for everything today. Thank you for all the impact you're making on the young people, on all the educators who support the young people across the country and beyond, as I know you've got an international following as well. Thank you so much, George.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with Jorge Valenzuela.